Okay, today's lesson is on dividing the quotient rule, negative rule, and zero rule of exponents. But remember, we're also practicing with IXL to review. So today's practice, if you can, spend 15 minutes or so on IXL. And the code that you're going to type in is LBX. And the focus of this is writing equations in point slope form from a graph. Point slope form, if you remember, was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where x1, y1 is a point that's on the graph, and then m is your slope. And if you remember from when we did graphing, sloped on a graph is rise over run, so you're drawing triangles. So that's what I need you to spend about 15 or 20 minutes doing. So that's going to be the warm-up. That's what everyone is doing for our the warm-up. So here is the meat of the lesson. Okay, so properties of exponents, division. We've multiplied the product rule. Remember, you added the exponents. The power rule, you multiplied the exponents. So now we are talking about the quotient rule, where you're dividing. And so if you're given just a regular number, you could very easily put this into a calculator, but you don't need to, okay? So it is 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. That is 10 to the fourth over 10 times 10. Just like reducing fractions, my 10s cancel out, so I'm left with 10 times 10, 10 to the second power. Same thing here. I have 6 2s. I have 3 2s. I'm going to cross out top to bottom. Whoops. That one I didn't mean to cross out, so I have 3 2s left, so that's 2 to the third. The same thing when we're talking about variables. I have 7 x's, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 2 x's on the bottom. I'm going to cancel out, so I'm left with x to the fifth. So by now you should understand what the quotient rule is, okay? If they have, and again, common bases. This only works with common bases. If the bases are the same, you're going to just subtract the exponents. Okay, so, and we're getting to where your assignment today will be kind of combining the product rule, the power rule, the quotient rule, negative exponents. Okay, but this is the thing. And this is also, you can also find this on your formula chart. And if hopefully you still have that half purple sheet of paper that I gave you for DCCA 3 in December, because all of these rules are on there. So it's nothing you have to memorize, but with practice, you will. Okay? It will become kind of second nature. So our practice, whoops, sorry, hit the wrong button. Okay, and this is the same thing. Apply the quotient power of powers property to write each as a single power. Remember to group like bases and then apply the property when necessary. Excuse me. So 6 to the 10th over 6 to the 8th. My bases are the same. I'm going to subtract, so it's going to be 6 to the 10 minus 8. 6 squared. When we have coefficients, you divide the coefficients just like you would normally. So 4n to the 8th divided by 2n to the 7th. 4 divided by 2. We're going to do this one first. 4 divided by 2 is 2. My variables, 10 to the 8th divided by 10 to the 7th. That's the same thing as subtracting. 10 to the 8 minus 7th power. 8 minus 7 is 1. So I'm left with 2n. So for number 3, I'm going to break it apart to show you what the grouping looks like. I have my coefficients. I have my x's. And then I have my y's. And again, you will get to the point where you don't have to separate them like this. You can just do it. But for right now, to start, this is just best practice. 7 over 14 is 1/2. And then I'm subtracting my x's. So 12 minus 4, I have x to the 8th. And then 9 minus 3, y to the 6th. So for the example here, x8, x to the 2nd is 8 minus 2, x to the 6th. So grouping, I've got 32 over 4. We have x to the 7th over x to the 4th, y to the 5th over y squared. Do each one individually. 32 divided by 4. 32 divided by 4 is 8. 7 minus 4 is 3. 5 minus 2 is 3. So that would be your answer. So that's what you're doing. You're subtracting. Okay, now understand that on the STAR test, it's not going to just be these rules in isolation. You're going to be combining them. Okay? So, oops, sorry. So here in C and D, apply the quotient of powers property to simplify the expression. So I have 8 to the negative 2nd power, y to the negative 3rd, and our negative, right, you are not allowed to have a negative exponent. You flip it to the bottom. So basically this would be 8 times 8 times 8 over 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 times 8. Cancel out my 8s. So I'm left with 1 over 8 squared. So I have 5 y's on top over 8 y's. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to get rid of top to bottom. So I'm left with 1 over y to the 3rd. This is how you avoid negative exponents. You drop it to the bottom. You put a 1 over it. So 8 to the negative 2nd, 1 over 8 squared. 1 over y to the 3rd would be y raised to the negative 3rd power, but remember, that is not allowed. You can't have a negative exponent, okay? So this example, 6 to the negative 7, I'm going to drop it to the bottom. Okay, this is what I was talking about when we are combining rules. Y to the negative 5th times y to the 9th. Because I'm multiplying, I'm going to use my product rule that says I'm going to add. Negative 5 plus 9 is y to the 4th. So for number 6, this is a tricky one. Negative, it's x. Now I'm using my quotient rule because I'm dividing, so I'm going to subtract. x to the negative 5 minus 12. I'm sorry, not 12. Was thinking ahead. Minus 7. Keep, change, opposite. I have x to the negative 12th. So I'm going to put 1 over x to the 12th. If you have a negative exponent in the denominator, all you have to do is flip it to the top. Basically, it's opposite. Negative just means you're flipping it to the other side. You're going to flip it if it's, like right here, it was x to the negative 2. We're going to flip it to the bottom. Here, it was 1 over x to the negative 10, so we flip it to the top. Okay? This is just going to take practice. I can't explain it any easier. I can't give you, there's no really tricks or hints. This just takes practice. So the last one for today before we start getting into heavy practice, the zero power property. So we've got 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Cross out everything. I'm left with 1. So anything raised to the zero property is 1. This will never change. You could have 1 million to the zero power. The answer is going to be 1. Okay? So for this one, think about what it's asking. I'm using the product rule, so I'm going to add my exponent. That 2 is just going to stay there. Now I'm going to add, I've got b to the negative 7th plus times b to the 7th. So I'm adding my exponents. So I'm going to have b to the zero power. So that's 2 times 1. So here my answer is just 2. For number 9, I'm going to divide like normal. 10 divided by 2. So if we break it apart, I have 5. So now we're going to subtract these. Negative 3 minus negative 6. Keep, change, opposite. Negative 3 plus 6. I have x to the 3rd. So you're breaking it apart. It's going to be really important to break this apart into the different constants, constants, and variables. And again, I say this to all of my classes. There's going to be a time where you can do it in your head, use your mental math. That is great. But because this is something new, I need to see you do your steps. Okay? So for number 10, we've got 18 over 9, x to the negative 2nd power over x to the 3rd, y to the 3rd over y, and then they're trying to trick you because that z to the 0 power is 1. So I'm going to have 2, negative 2, minus 3, keep, change, opposite, is 2 to the negative 5th. If there's not an exponent, put 1. So I have y to the 3rd over y1. I subtract. I'm going to have y to the 1st power. I cannot leave it like that. You will never see that on a test. Okay, so my answer is 2 y over x to the 5th power, because this is negative, you have to drop it to the bottom. Okay? So that's the kind of problem you're going to see most often on a STAR test. For number 11, we are using the power rule. And remember from the previous video, the power rule says you multiply the exponents. So here I'm going to have x to the negative 15th over x to the negative 16th. Now I'm using the division rule. So it's x to the negative 15th minus negative 16th. Keep change opposite. I'm left with x to the 1st power, or just x. Okay. A few more examples. So I've got b to the 7th times 2b to the 7th. So I'm using my product rule. I'm going to add my exponents. So I have 2, negative 7 plus 7 is 0. So I have 2b to the 0, 2 times 1. So our answer is just 2. For number 9, I'm going to break it apart. Ten divided by 2 is 5. So here I'm using my quotient rule, so I'm going to subtract. So I have negative 3 minus negative 6. Keep change opposite. Negative 3 plus 6 is x to the 5th. So that simplifies to 5x to the 5th. Number 10, again, separate. Oops, that's not right. You can't put y and z together. So I have 2. I'm going to do this in red so the answer stands out. I have 2. What is 2 minus 3? That's negative 5. So I know my x is going to go below. So I have x to the 5th. 3 minus 1 is 2. So I have y squared. So for number 11, I start out, I use my power rule, so I multiply. So I have x to the negative 15th over x to the negative 16th. Negative 15 minus negative 16. Keep change opposite. I'm left with negative 15 plus 16 is 1. So we're left with x to the 1st power. Okay, so number 12 is an error analysis question. It says, Mr. Williams wrote the following expression on the board. Xander thinks that this expression can be simplified to 1 because of the zero property, the zero power property. Do you agree or disagree? Okay, so using the quotient rule first, I'm going to have 8 minus negative 8. Does that equal 0? Yes or no? And that will give you your answer. For number 13, Arlena is decorating the top of her graduation cap. The top of the cap is shaped like a rectangle with an area of 16x to the 3rd, y to the 7th. The length of the cap is 4x, y to the 8th. Write an expression that represents the width. So we have area or area equals length times width. They said that the area was 16x cubed y to the 7th. The length was 4x y to the 8th. We're finding the width. So to do that, you're dividing. So to work over here, you're going to separate like normal. Excuse me. So we have 16 divided by 4 is 4. 3 minus 1 is x squared. 7 minus 8 is negative 1. So I have to put the y to the negative 1 on the bottom. So that is your answer to that one. And again, you can multiply to check your answer. Okay? Okay, so perfect example of what you're going to see on STAR this year, because it's going to be not just multiple choice. There's going to be problems where you have to drag and drop. Okay, so the way this could be tested is they could give you just the students' names. They could give you that you can drag and drop, and then you're going to drag the students' answers to the name to the correct box or something like that. I can pretty much guarantee that this would not be like a multiple choice question. Okay, so we have to simplify. Okay, and this is what I was talking about when I said multiple properties in the same problem. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to simplify the top first, then you're going to simplify the bottom, and then you're going to divide. Okay, so that's generally what we do. We simplify the top, simplify the bottom. Our final step is to divide. So the top, I'm going to multiply. I have 12 times 2 is 24. 9r times 9 to the 4th power. Product rule, I'm adding my exponent, so I have r to the 13th. And then s to the negative 8. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom. I have 3. I have r to the negative 2nd, so I can leave that. I have s times s to the negative 3rd. 1 plus negative 3 is negative 2. So now I can start simplifying. 24 divided by 3 is 8. R to the 13th divided by r to the negative 2nd would be 13 minus negative 2, which is 15. So I have r to the 15th, s to the 8th, divided by s to the negative 8th, divided by s to the negative 2nd. So we're going to subtract negative 8 minus negative 2. Keep, change, opposite. That's going to be 6. So I'm left with s to the 6th. And because this is negative 6, that's why we put it on the bottom. So that's why it is Forest, but not Lacey. Because negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6. So that is the quotient rule, negative exponents, and the one thing you need to remember is anything raised to the 0 power is 1. Okay? So, and I will email you. I kind of decided to change things up, so I took some stuff out of Skyward, But for you, I'll go ahead and I will email you the link when I email you this video. It is a Desmos match activity to where you're picking the two cards and matching it to the correct answer. I also need you to do the exit ticket. Okay, because what I am doing, like I've said before, what I'm doing with the exit ticket is I am averaging those grades together. Okay? And again, I need you to understand that it's really important. If you are not understanding something, you need to be letting me know. I need you to start turning the work in. Okay?